Welcome to episode 9. This is Loans and Drones, and we're talking today to somebody who has been behind the camera, behind the scenes, but he's the one that makes all this work. Travis is here from Visual Filmworks, not to mention he does wedding videos for Bella Ti Amo, and all the cool stuff that you're seeing with regards to this podcast is created from him and Chris. And I brought Travis on because we had a little bit of an open space and we're going to change it around a little bit. So with that being said, stay tuned. All right, Travis, you decided to come on today because you wanted to ask me questions. What kind of questions do you have for me? And then we'll go back and forth and see how things roll.
Yeah, I really have no idea where this will go, but I figured at this point in, people are pretty invested with you, this is like episode 9. So I figured let's find out who is this man behind Loans and Drones and ask some questions just to get a better understanding of like who you are and what you're passionate about. So I think the first most important question we should start with and just get out of the way, who are you voting for this year? I'm totally kidding. You don't have to answer that.
I love it. That's a good starting point. No. Blagojevich, where are you at? Oh, wait. All right.
No, you're good. Bill, I would just love, because from someone on the outside that might be even kind of confused, like, okay, so this guy does like home loans, but he also flies drones and he has a really nice looking podcast. And so like, they might just not like really understand like what you do. So I'd love to just like kind of hear a little bit of like your background, like how did you get started? How did you get to this point that you're at now? And just like the full picture.
Yeah, that's a good question because a lot of times people ask me, what's the reason for the name Loans and Drones? Well, about 7 years ago, I picked up a drone just because I got bored with the mortgage industry. So I've been doing mortgages for about 26 years, and I was working with a bank, and just things weren't working as well as I thought they were. So I picked up a drone as a hobby. And then one thing led to the next, and I met a photographer, real estate photographer, and I said, hey, by the way, would you like to have a drone person shooting video content and maybe some photos? And I'm not even good at photos. But fortunately, she was amazing at editing. So we wound up connecting. And then next thing you know, it took off, no pun intended, with regards to the drone business. So I started actually doing a lot of video, a lot of photography with the drone piece. And then all of a sudden I picked up another camera, and then one thing led to the next. I really got invested into the whole video piece of this. And that was my value add for a lot of the real estate agents. So what happened is, fast forward, I started getting a lot of this drone business, and it started taking a little bit more of a front seat to the mortgage business. Well, from my perspective, I didn't make a lot of money doing it. So I just picked it up as a hobby thinking it would be fun. And it turned out to be its own little, entity. And so I created Billy Productions at the time to do that piece. But the problem was that was taking front seat. So I had to create the tagline of Loans and Drones and remind the real estate agents that I worked with that, hey, I can't pay my bills if I don't get loans. So it's got to be loans is front and center. And that's the reason why I'm doing these videos. So it's Loans and Drones, not drones and loans.
So are you saying us creatives can't pay bills?
I did not say that. Well, listen, by the way, Travis, like I feel like I'm in the presence of excellence here because I shouldn't even be talking about the creative side because he's got the skill.
Awesome. I appreciate that. So at what point did you decide, okay, I want to come out from behind the camera and I want to start filming myself and making my own content?
Like everybody else, you're always intimidated by the one-eyed monster, which is the camera, of course. And then, but I found that in the real estate world that there was a movement that was happening because a lot of the agents didn't want to be in front of the camera. But I'm like, wait, why wouldn't you want to be in front of the camera? Because you're branding yourself. So it became a marketing piece, more of a personal brand. And that's kind of what's morphed into my own business model, is that your personal brand is who you are. And as you work into the social media, people are going to remember you, not the company you work for. No offense to companies and their brand, but if you think about a lot of the top agents out there, and I would ask you, can you remember who they work for? But you see their amazing video quality, and you see their amazing listings and luxury listings and so on and so on. And that's where I think individuals in today's world with social media need to really understand the fact that they need to personally brand themselves. So that's what I kind of took from that. I took the video piece. I'm like, wow, I actually got a little bit of I'm not as good as Travis for all intents and purposes, but I had enough to be dangerous. But at the end of the day, I thought if I can brand myself as Bill the mortgage guy and create this loans and drones type of, brand, then I think we could create more synergy and gain more traction with regards to what I do to make a living.
Yeah. And how has that been? Like, have you actually seen a shift from, pre-bill, no video to bill now doing video? Like, has there been a shift in your business because of that?
Completely. Like and we were talking about this earlier, is that last year I tested it out with the 12 days of Christmas. I did a 12 days of Christmas with mortgage videos. And it was hard because I had to edit it myself. And that's the art form that you have that I could never, ever do. So these guys know what they're doing. And I would highly recommend, if you're going to do video, talk to Travis. He's the GOAT, like everybody says, of video. So with that being said, I tried it and I did it for 12 days. And next thing you know, when you really want to quantify something, you look back and go, okay, measure it with your returning investment. All it was time. And I did buy an app that edited it with AI, but I wound up getting 3 deals, a purchase and a refinance and 2 purchases, which paid for itself. So that to me told me that video is the movement that people need to kind of work on and focus on in this day and age. I'm not knocking the fact that stills and like just posts that don't have video can't make something. But I think if you're really trying to make a move in this market, when the herd is thinning, I mean, the market is really there's a lot of people leaving the industry. If you really want to make a mark, you have to go with video, because people are going to learn who you are. They're going to learn your personality. They're going to learn your character, and they're going to want to work with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know the exact stat off the top of my head. I didn't even know I was going to pull a stat out. So otherwise I would have came prepared with it. But I do know there's something, it was like, I think like 80% of viewers want to see more of the brands and businesses that they like. They feel like some of these brands put out videos and a lot of viewers still don't even think it's like enough video of them. Like they want to see more of that video of them. And especially when it's like a small business that they know, like, and trust, they just want to like see what they're up to and stay engaged with them because they had such a good experience with them. They want to keep seeing more of that. And it seems like that's kind of what you're doing. Like you're staying at top of mind because you're doing these videos. So, especially I feel like in the industry you're in, I mean, I see a lot of realtors doing videos. I definitely don't see a lot of mortgage brokers doing videos. So like when you're doing videos and a realtor is mindlessly scrolling, it's like you're coming to top of mind by doing that. So now here we are now doing the podcast, which I feel like is almost like the next evolution of what you're doing. This is just like a whole nother level that you're on doing this podcast now. So like, why did you think this is an avenue that you wanted to pursue with the podcast?
Like I heard from a few different people, if you want to do something this year, the 2024, you should do a video podcast, not just a podcast, right? I think when you think about if you're a video person and you can put a mic and you can put conversations, this alone right here, a long version, because there's two parts, right? There's a long version, there's a short version, which a lot of people are going towards the short version right now, which is like 30 to 45 second clips, reels, shorts, whatever. But the money is in the long version, meaning that you can actually get more attention into YouTube. YouTube and Google like feed off of each other. But how do you get people in a long version when they're used to, like, the attention span of an individual today is less than a goldfish, which is less than 9 seconds, right? So you have to find a hook. That's why it's funny. Everything's connected to fishing. So what you have is you have to get that hook in, which is 45 seconds 3 seconds, and really get the attention. But if you get people liking those reels, then it could force, it's kind of like the center of the Cinnabon. You bring them over to long version, and then you attract more people, and that's how you grow as far as your brand. And so what I decided to do is take the long version and use AI, which is what we're using right now to cut these long version podcasts up into more content. It just takes out a ton of time of me sitting in front of the camera for 15 times. What this AI Opus will do is cut up the video into 15 segments. Within about 10 minutes, you'll have so much content that you don't have to worry about doing all the videos, which I think is awesome. I think in conversation style like this with you and myself, we could create so much content. So it just saves you on time, I guess, is what my ultimate answer is to that.
Yeah, you bring up a good point too, where I think a lot of people, especially those in the real estate industry, they're all being told they need to do short form content, and they forget, or they either forget about long form content, or they think it's like it doesn't exist anymore, or I don't need to do it. But they both have their own places that are of value, and you just have to know how to use them and use them at the correct time.
Right.
And I feel like a podcast is the perfect example of that, where, like you were kind of saying, the short form could reel them in. And then they like your short form stuff, and they're like, I want to see more of what this guy has to say or who he brought on his podcast. And they go find your long form, and then the long form is going to add up way more view time than the short form on stuff like YouTube, which naturally YouTube and Google, play hand in hand together since Google owns YouTube. So there's a boost to your SEO, and then it's just a progression that just keeps building. So
yeah. I got a question for you. So you've been doing more of this, and your stuff is amazing, by the way. So what would you say is a normal average post that people should be posting videos if they're doing short form?
Like what kind of short form content?
Well, not necessarily short. Like how many times should they post during a week, I would say?
There's a lot of answers to that. Chris is probably over there right now wanting to speak up because he has his own opinion on it.
We're
and I have
gonna
my
get him
own
on
opinion.
next, don't worry.
Everyone kind of has an opinion. And, really at the end of the day, as long as you're just like staying at top of mind, and that can look different for different people. Like, for us, like I post like maybe like 3 or 4 times a week. But it's because a lot of the videos we post get like 10,000 plus views. So they have life to them where, I posted on Monday, I might invite like, Chris as a collaborator or my business account as a collaborator, and then I'll accept that collaboration. So now it's getting like an extra day out of it, and it keeps getting shared and viewed. So like, I don't really need to be posting like a ton of stuff because that one post is getting life for a few days or a few weeks. If you're just getting started, it doesn't hurt to kind of like, I don't want to call it oversaturate the market, but just like posting a lot of stuff because you're trying to start from nothing, and you want to get in front of people. So like, I would say if you're starting from scratch, you might want to post like once a day of something. But if you've kind of already built a reputation, like I feel like 3 or 4 times like a week is pretty good. And then as far as the long form, it's really whatever you're trying to do. But like if you are doing a podcast, I feel like the sweet spot is like, once a week or bi-weekly. I don't think you want to do much more than that because people only have so much of a time commitment. And if you're giving them like a 30, 40-minute podcast, and they're probably listening to other podcasts too, like they have to fit that into their schedule. So if you're giving them a podcast like every day, they're not going to have time for that. But like a once a week or bi-weekly is usually like a pretty good rule of thumb. So
yeah, Chris, he's back there. He's itching, right? But he's you'll be on here sooner than later, Chris. But he made a good point when we started this to really, I think with consistency, we talked about this too. Consistency is putting a plan together, and I think simplifying it with one goal. And I think what Chris said at the beginning is like, if you get to 21 episodes, then you've already made it past to the 1%. Is that what is, Chris? Yeah. Okay. So thumbs up. Thumbs up. Yeah. So you've made it to your goal. And I think that's the goal here with the podcast is try it out, see if it works. And right now we're already seeing a ton of traction with just the upticks on views and engagement. And obviously those are leading into business for real estate agents and also my side too. So that's huge. And first of all, I just want to thank you guys for what you're doing because these guys are the best, and that's why I chose them. So if you are interested in creating something like this with this content, and like I said, check out their wedding stuff too. It's amazing. It's cinematic. This is the difference between your iPhone and really leveling up to a different level this year. And you're going to need to do this. I would say hedge on it because if you're not, you're going to be left behind.
That brings up the consistency talk, kind of brings up a question I have for you too. So like by doing this podcast, how has that trained you in being more consistent?
Well, this year's been a tough, like this is funny because at the beginning of the year, I wrote on a big whiteboard. I should have brought it, but my goals. I love the change a year because that gives you a chance to reset and then focus the year ahead. But right out of the gates this year, 2024 threw a bunch of curveballs. All I would say is that you're going to get knocked down when you make a goal like that as far as consistency. But what consistency is the same repetitive thing over and over again. And this isn't too hard. I mean, it's one day out of the month that we've been doing this, and we've all kind of kept each other accountable with showing up to this space and doing 2 episodes a month. And it's at the end of the day, it's 3 hours, 3 or 4 hours. So if you don't do that, that accountability leaves, and then you're like everybody else, the mass population that starts something and quits. And I think in this day and age, consistency is going to weigh out heavily on your success, and you will be successful by staying consistent.
Yeah, you bring up a good point too about how this really isn't that big of a time commitment. Like I think people see this and it can be very intimidating, especially if they're trying to DIY it and do it all themselves. Then yeah, it could take a lot of time. But when you're working with the right people and you kind of partner with the right people, like you were saying, like we come in, it's like a 4-hour day for us, really. Like it's like we set up, recording the podcast, it's like a couple hours, and we do 2 podcasts in one day, and then tear it down. And then, the editing, we do a lot of the editing live. So it's already pretty much done. And then taking it into something like Opus AI to do some like short form content AI editing. It's like, there's really not much of a commitment to it, which is great. And I think sometimes people are intimidated by this because they're like, oh man, I'm going to need to like schedule all this stuff out. But it's like, really, to get it done, it doesn't take much. And then you think about how much content you're getting out of just that short window of time. It's like such a huge value add. So
yeah, totally. I think that you nailed it on the head.
So what's next for the podcast? Do you have some dream guests that you'd like to have on here?
Well, I mean, listen, I'd love to have somebody. I mean, I actually appreciate you guys being on here, and I appreciate, like, here's the thing with all the guests we've had, every single one I've taken a nugget of information out, and I've never forgotten it. So everybody's, and this is the beauty of the podcast, you get to learn about people that you didn't know answers to. So every individual that's come through, I've learned one piece about business or about a relationship, or the way people's minds are wired up. Yes, I would love to have some type of person that's had a huge experience or impact on somebody's life. I don't quite know, but at the end of the day, I think that that's around the corner. We just don't know who it is. Yeah. So if you're out there, we'd love to have you on. And these guys, like I said, just make it so easy. Yeah. And you guys, like, seriously, you guys are, I think the other thing when you're working with a team like this, one of the best things is the natural relationship that you have with these people. If they're not making you feel comfortable in front of the camera, it's not going to be well. It's not going to go well, right? So you guys really make it easy for somebody to be comfortable in front of the camera, which I think is an art form in itself.
Yeah, and I think that's a benefit too. Like, I know a lot of people try to make content themselves, and they can do a pretty good job. But when you don't have someone like manning that camera, I think it can be hard because you are literally. I think, I don't know if it was this pod. I think it was the actual podcast where you said you're talking like the one-eyed beast, the camera basically. And so you're like staring at this piece of technology trying to pretend like it's people, and it's just different if there's someone standing behind the camera or off to the side of it, like coaching you along so you understand what you're doing and just making you feel more comfortable. So
yeah. And I think, if you haven't gotten in front of the camera, just like, it's kind of like the Think Media guys, just press record, just start doing it, because I think everybody starts out nervous. And then once you start doing it, then it just becomes second nature. A lot of people use scripts. I'm not a big script guy, but I think there's other people out there that they use scripts and they'll knock out 3 or 4 videos or 5 videos in a matter of 20 minutes. And I'm like, my jaw hits the ground. I'm like, that's crazy. I wish I could do that. But at the end of the day, we all have our own gifts and strengths. And, I'm really impressed by what you guys are doing. So the whole package with you guys is that you can be behind the camera, and then you also know how to be in front of the camera and also kind of coach that as well too. And I think that's art form itself.
Yeah, and that brings up like really anyone in a profession. It's like good to actually do the thing you ask your clients to do sometimes. So like that was a big thing for me. It was like learning what it's like to be in front of the camera, because I'm expecting, these business owners or like with the weddings, like these couples that have never been in front of a professional camera before, have never been in this like scenario. And you're like asking them to do these things and they're like, I don't know how to feel comfortable with that. So like for us to like go in front of the camera, it allows us to like understand like, okay, this is what it's like. This is what, like, this is kind of nerve wracking. Like, it's not just a conversation. It's like, there's lights over here, there's cameras over here. And I think it's good with any profession to like kind of step back sometimes and be like, like even like with a realtor, like put yourself in the shoes of like this buyer or seller. And like, what are they actually really thinking about? What are they going through versus just like kind of assuming what it's like?
Oh yeah. I can't tell you, like when I bought a few houses, but it wasn't the first house. I was just too naive. I didn't know any better. And it was a little condo, $83,000. But the second house I bought, all of a sudden, within like 3 days of signing the contract, I had this weird phenomenon, like just overwhelming anxiety, not knowing where it's coming from. And then my brother, Dave, which, my family knows, he goes, now you know what first-time homebuyers go through. It's called post-purchase dissonance. And it's an anxiety that they're buying the biggest thing they've ever purchased in their life. And you get now you get it. Now you can empathize towards what they're going through.
Yeah.
And you probably felt that when you got married. I mean, there's a lot of emotion that comes along with something that big. And I think that's honestly, being a wedding photographer and videographer would be one of the hardest jobs because you got one day. You can't go back and say you mind going back down the aisle.
Can you kiss again? I didn't see when you guys kissed. Could you? Yeah, like I can't imagine. And you brought up something too. Like, I feel like because I was doing weddings for a little bit and video all together for a little bit before I got married. But then like once you get married, you really kind of realize like the things you like. I would say things to try to sell to the couple, but I didn't really know what it meant. I was just like, I was told to say these things like, oh, there's things you're going to miss or whatever. But then when you actually go through with the process, it's like, there literally were like, was so many parts of the day. Like I didn't even get to experience like, like even like when everyone comes in during the reception, like I didn't get to see any of our wedding party and their silly dance moves or whatever. Like we were standing outside the door, but by having photo and video, you like get to relive that. And now it's like true to me because I experienced it. So I understand like when I'm saying like, hey, people pass away, like this is the only way you might be able to remember them. Like that's happened to us now where like we go back to the video and like those people are gone.
And I saw that too. I did that. I did a video for my in-laws and I counted, there was like 3 or 4 people that had passed away. I'm like, oh my gosh, you don't realize how much that makes a difference until years down the road. You're like, oh my gosh, that's a beautiful shot of him looking at the camera, you know?
And then on the kind of lighter note of that, you get to see the way people change in size too. So some for the better, but some not for the better. So same with their,
but that's what we're going to be teaching a class on focal length, which you can thin people up.
How do I should have asked that before we started recording. How can you make me look skinny before we start recording?
You're fine. Me, on the other hand. But no, that's awesome. Look, I appreciate you like stepping in. We got to have more of this because I think it's some great synergy here with you and myself, and we're gonna get Chris in here too. Then we just got to get somebody behind the camera and switching the gears. But if people wanted to find you for what you are doing for real estate agents and also the wedding side, where can they find you?
Before I get to that, I'm gonna do to you what you do to all your guests. I'm gonna give you 3 pop quiz questions right now.
Come on.
Speed dating. Here we go. First question: if you could have dinner with anyone, whether they're alive or dead, who would it be?
I'd probably say, I think it'd be Michael Jordan.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I don't know.
At his house that he can't sell?
Yeah. Maybe we'll do the podcast there. That'd be fun. No, that would be, I don't know. He's always been an inspiration to me, like a winner in the basketball, because I used to play basketball and want to be like him, as a kid. But at the same time, it's like the success that he had. And I'd also like to break him down too, like to see, hey, what's going on? What's going on behind the celebrity side? I want to see what's really deep inside. That's what I like hearing about for a lot of these podcasts, is really kind of going deeper than the surface piece,
Yeah. I think he's interesting too because you could just tell like he really cared about the game. Like when they would win, he's crying and he's emotional, and it's like because it meant so much to him. Whereas like I feel like some of these players you see, you could just tell it's just like a paycheck. I mean, they're really good players, but it's like they don't maybe care about the passion of the game. Whereas like you could just tell like this meant the world to him. Whether he's getting paid or not, it was like it meant everything to him. So
that's a good point, to be authentic with what you do in your craft.
What would be your last meal?
My last meal?
Yeah, with Michael Jordan.
I would say Man, it just depends on how I'm feeling at the time, but I like, you know what my favorite, I would say the St. Charles place. This is a plug, shameless plug to one of the steak joints in my town. St. Charles place, the ribeye is
Haven't heard of
amazing.
that one.
Have you had that one?
No, I haven't heard of that one. So.
Yeah, it's really good. And it's almost like, so the other cool part about that place, I'm kind of double barreling it with like the place, but when I go out to dinner, it's got to be I like the ambiance too. So it's kind of like the Regal Beagle from Three's Company. You ever seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Regal Beagle. So it's like old school. It's like you step back in old times, but they really have awesome steaks.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then last question, if you could have a drink in your hand right now, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Well, my wife and I, we should be buying stock on Santa Margarita Pinot Grigio, but that's kind of foo-foo. So I would probably say I'm a Pinot Grigio guy. No, I like my wine, but at the same time, my favorite beer is Spotted Cow from Wisconsin. So that's good.
Shout out to
What
Wisconsin.
about you?
I actually don't drink much alcohol, so I don't know, a stevia, some water.
Well, okay, so if it's not alcohol, which I need to probably chill out on, I was talking about that this morning. Ginger ale. For some reason, ginger ale, like anytime I go on a flight, the first thing I get is ginger ale. Like, would you like a drink? Yeah.
You know what's funny with ginger ale? I always thought that was like an old person's drink when I was younger.
Old,
so I never drink it. And then kind of the past few years, I've been drinking it more and more. So I don't know if that means I'm getting old or I just...
Well, how old are you?
30. Well, should I say that on the podcast? I don't know.
Wait, is that
35?
35?
Yeah.
That's okay. I'm old. I mean,
I didn't want to make you feel older.
No, I already feel old, but I'm turning 50 this year, so that's okay.
Big celebration coming. Should we announce that on the podcast right now?
Yeah. Well, if I could
everyone's invited.
Okay, so if I could do a 50th birthday right now, I would totally go to the 150th Kentucky Derby. That's where I'd be, but it's not going to happen this year.
Well, let's make it happen. That's our goal here.
Well, we're going to have to ask Michael Jordan.
Yeah. Once we get Michael Jordan on the podcast,
then we're anywhere we want to go, right?
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. You can do whatever you want.
Sweet. How can people find you if they wanted this awesome quality video and content?
Like my home address or just like on social media?
I mean, it depends on if you want. if you want to give your home address, that's completely fine. But that's up to you, buddy.
So we have a few accounts on social media. My personal one is TR Heberling. I know my last name's hard to spell, so it's TRHEBERLING. That's where I post, the goofy stuff we do, my cats, my family, that kind of stuff. If you want to see our wedding stuff, it's Bella Tiamo Films, so at Bella Tiamo Films, or for our commercial stuff, it's Visual Filmworks, so at Visual Filmworks, and then just add a .com to that if you want to find the website, basically. But if anyone ever has any questions about anything video production or social media or whatever, they can just send me a DM or something, and I'm happy to help out. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much for stepping in, and we're definitely going to do this again. And with that being said, we'll see you on the next episode.